We're so excited to have you here today. Alekz is a longtime Santa Cruz resident who is prolific in helping in emergencies and getting people what they need when there's a crisis, which takes a pretty brave kind of person to do that kind of thing. Alekz is an environmentalist, a journalist, an activist, a humanitarian, and he's also written a book called Resource Guide to Solve Urgent Global Issues. That sounds like a book that we desperately need. Yeah. You were mentioning to me earlier that it was kind of Katrina, when you kind of saw what was happening with Katrina, that got you kind of passionate about getting out there and, I mean, really leaving your house and getting on the road and going, hey, I'm gonna go help with that. Tell us about how you came in interaction with that in Katrina.
Thank you. So again, I appreciate this opportunity to be on this show. Around 1999-2000, I actually worked for a community TV station for a year. And after that entry-level position, I worked for Channel 2 News in Reno, Nevada for an additional year. I learned how to, go out and do video shoots and, do video production, and I really enjoyed the whole getting the story and getting that information out to the general public to raise awareness of what's going on, to help make the world a better place, or help with community issues or disasters, crime and stuff. So it wasn't until around 2003, 2004 that I started just doing my own video journalism, because I had my own video camera, and I would go out and I'd cover car crashes, different storms, lightning storms, flooding, snowstorms in the Reno, Tahoe area. So I got experience covering a lot of forest fires during fire season. After that, I moved back to Santa Cruz, where my mother lived and my sisters. So I started learning more about, disasters and journalism. And then it was the images that I saw on TV when I was 25 years old, the devastation of the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina that affected the New Orleans area, that inspired me to go and help. And I had a difficult time just watching what was going on, seeing the inaction of the government, people not being able to get in help. I saw the suffering that the journalists were getting from in the region, and I felt sick to my stomach. I wanted to do something. So at 25 years old, with support from my family and my friends, I was able to pack my Ford Bronco with food, water, and some survival supplies, and I actually drove 2,500 miles to the New Orleans area, and I was able to pass out food and bottled water to people that were affected by Katrina, and I felt really empowered that I was one person that was able to individually help people, and I realized that no disasters are under control. Like, disasters overwhelm local and regional resources, that they need help from outside sources, whether it's community members, volunteers, nonprofits, government agencies, first responders, police, paramedics, fire, and everybody needs to work together, and the government had a difficult time with that. So that was my first major one, and I got really inspired after that.
You just jumped in the Bronco.
Jumped in the Bronco.
Rode on down there. That's fabulous. Do you remember coming into the scene? Do you remember anything that hit you, that you saw that impacted you?
I do remember when you watch something on the news, you see the destroyed buildings and the flooding and the death and the suffering and the people, and you see what it's like. And when you're entering a disaster zone, over especially a hurricane, you see how everything around you changes as you enter. And I do remember going in there, there's absolutely no cars going the direction that I'm going. There's people trying to evacuate on the opposite side. But you do see everything that you're familiar with seeing, whether it's a stop sign upright or a house, or everything is different around you. Your whole environment changes. And it's a type of culture shock. And then you try to deal with your adrenaline and focus on your goals and objectives and try to help the best you could. But I wasn't as effective as I was later in life, because I was 25 years old. So I tried my best to document the disaster and passed out food and supplies, but it wasn't until later that I got more training and experience and found better methods to help the most amount of people.
That got you going, but you kind of needed a boat, really, if you were going to be in. So you had to kind of stay around the edges where the flooding was not.
Yeah, and there was a lot of freeway overpasses, a lot of areas that were completely inaccessible, and I I did miss the opportunity because I got there was a helicopter, and I was like asking if I can get a ride on the helicopter to document the disaster, and they're like, yeah, we're taking off in an hour, and I'm like, at 25 years old, I just couldn't wait an hour, and they said I could go with them, and I look back, I'm like, wait, I could have just waited for an hour, and I could have flown over New Orleans after Katrina, a historic moment, and documented this and had incredible footage and then been able to help, but instead I was just too focused on helping, and I was only there for about 7 to 10 days before I realized I just couldn't do as much without being a major nonprofit without a certain level of experience, and I came back to California.
It sounds like it really impacted you because you then continued in your life. What was the next emergency, do you remember, that you went to kind of help with?
So after Hurricane Katrina, I continued to take 84 units at Cabrillo College. So I took nuclear, chemical, biological first responder, hazmat first responder, fire behavior and combustion. I took the EMT course. I took a meteorology course, a couple horticulture courses. I took a lot of classes that I felt that I could apply to my career path and some of my my goals when it comes to covering a disaster. So anything that was related to helping people, animals, and the environment, where that was going to make me address disasters better. And then I also, outside of school, I continued to expand my knowledge and education. I took all the Red Cross courses, which I definitely recommend to anybody. It's a great entry-level position when it comes to disaster response. After the Red Cross course, I took the CERT course, which is Community Emergency Response Teams. It stands for CERT. I took that at the Felton Fire Station. And I continued to take like online FEMA training courses. I watched a lot of YouTube videos. I tried to learn everything that I could about the incident command system structure and how disasters how people recover from disasters and everything that I can. So then I continued to see more disasters happen, through TV. I think, let's see, the first major disaster. I covered a lot of forest fires because we live in California.
How about the Rim Fire?
I covered the Rim Fire, the Traby Fire, the Angora Fire.
How do you deal with the trauma of it?
I probably block it out, because when it comes to forms of PTSD, you're supposed to work out, and I guess when I have a bike, I ride my bike, try to get 8 hours of sleep, don't
keep
drink as much
in good
coffee,
balance.
Positive people in your life, writing down everything, and also having good support from family and friends.
We're so lucky to have some of us that are drawn to that because it's so needed, and it's amazing that you've kind of made that your focus, and that's taken you all over the world.
Yeah, it has.
Tell us some of the different places that you've been to related to that.
So I continue to get education and experience from every disaster I cover. So over the last maybe 5 years after Katrina, I've now been through about 6 or 7 hurricanes. The last one was Hurricane Michael, I think, that hit Panama City. And that was a major hurricane. I also covered the aftermath of Maria. That was that devastated Puerto Rico. I was in Florida for Irma. I was in Texas for the aftermath of Harvey. So aside from actually being at ground zero, cutting off 6 or 7 hurricanes, I've covered the aftermath of 5 hurricanes. The major one that really affected me was when I went to the Philippines after Superstorm Haiyan, local name Yolanda, and that was unbelievably devastating because it affected such a large region. It was difficult for help to come in from outside areas, and a lot of people suffered for a long time. There was not only just rioting and looting, like hundreds of inmates from the prison escaped. Women were getting raped. People were getting held up at gunpoint with military convoy. It was really dangerous. It was a really dangerous place, and it took much longer than other disasters because hurricanes, like a fire affects certain region. Earthquakes, I guess, everything is still in your house. It's just everything is destroyed.
Right.
Forest fires, you can kind of get out of their way to a certain extent. Hurricanes destroys everything. Not only does it causes, everything's dangerous after a hurricane. You'll get tetanus if you step on the wrong thing. If you get by the wrong bug, you'll get sick. If you drink the wrong water, eat the wrong food, you're going to get sick. If you're not paying attention to the right, they're just so dangerous. And the Philippines was extremely dangerous. And we're going to continue to see more hurricanes in connection to climate change and environmental issues. So that's especially concerning. Our society is not prepared for the hurricanes and superstorms of the future.
When you went to the Philippines, it's such a different culture.
And culture,
correct. And does that play into it? Like, do you feel safe there? Do you feel?
I felt safe in the Philippines because the people are genuinely good people, and even though there was, I think as a first responder, you're a lot safer than. Maybe I'm treated with more respect and given. They let me do my job, and volunteers have come and worked for me, and we accomplish our goals and our objectives and missions. It doesn't necessarily make it not dangerous, but I was more fortunate in the Philippines. So after the Philippines, that was my first major international mission. I think that was in 2013. I also covered the earthquake in Nepal. I don't remember what year that was, but that was the major earthquake.
Wow, in Nepal.
Nepal was also just amazing people that really wanted to. They had a lot of community. They helped each other. They rebuilt really well, and I think the more stable a community is before a disaster, the more resilient they'll be after a disaster.
So in the United States, we do see people come together and help. Is it pretty similar around the world? Everybody.
I think so.
That's that kind of community.
I think so, because like in Japan after the tsunami, there wasn't looting, there wasn't rioting. People were finding huge safes and they were turning them into authorities. And other areas where maybe it's more poverty stricken, like New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, or all the looting that I saw in Panama City after Hurricane Michael. So I guess it's just better to live in a safer community.
So you saw firsthand when crisis hits a stable community, the difference between, I can imagine.
So. Yeah, just stable and just being more prepared. I think they're just generally more prepared. People are more prepared, and
we are.
Maybe they're going into the situation stronger, mentally strong, physically strong, and with more resources and stuff. But
so Nepal, and you spent some time in Iraq, just a month.
Yeah, a month. I think it was a little over a month. So journalists were covering what was happening in the Middle East, and I only know so much about the wars and the conflict. And I saw ISIS mutilating and killing people, and also just bothered me deeply that for a couple years, I just could not get it out of my head that I was going to go and help the best that I could. And I couldn't just like forget about it. And it would always be something that was on my mind. And eventually, I ended up getting enough resources together, and I ended up going. I went by myself. I went to Erbil, which was 30 miles. Well, it is 30 miles away from Mosul, but it was 30 miles away from where ISIS was located. And ISIS took over Mosul, which is the second largest city in Iraq. And there was, a perimeter, securing the area that I was in. But it was still extremely dangerous. When our airplane landed, we actually spiraled down multiple times over the runway just so we wouldn't get shot out of the sky. And the same thing when I left a month later. The only Americans that I saw the entire time that I was there was a couple U.S. military soldiers at the airport when I arrived and when I left. And the only Caucasian or white people I saw the entire time I was there was maybe 7 to 10 Europeans. So I was the minority. You
were on the ground with the people.
I was on the ground. And I wish I could have been more effective. And I showed up early for the takeover of Mosul. I was like maybe 2-3 months early. So I wasn't able to be as effective as I wanted to be on the front lines and get into the war zone. Even though I did have opportunities, I went a different route with this. So I did, when I first got there, within the first few days, I met up with the Peshmerga military, and I went to their headquarters. Within like an hour, I worked my way up all the way to like the top general, and he had 7 stars on his shoulder and a big office and a nice room at a military compound. And I got authorization to go on ride-alongs with the Peshmerga military in the area and help get them supplies from, I helped them get like a lot of flashlights from hardware stores, because the soldiers on the front lines barely had anything, and they didn't have what they needed to fight ISIS. So I was helping purchase some stuff for the soldiers, and then I also got authorization to volunteer in both Syrian and Kurdish refugee camps. And that was my second objective. My third objective was I would go to medical supply stores and I would buy as many things as I could, and I would take them to the clinics. And these clinics, they didn't even have rubber gloves to like treat people. I mean, they were so low on supplies. So I was transporting medical supplies and taking food and resources to the
So you could be really good help.
Could.
In
Anybody
that situation.
could.
Anybody
Yeah.
could.
If they,
But that's the
yeah,
thing.
so
Not
that's-
anybody puts on their boots and gets in their truck and goes to Iraq.
Yeah.
So it's,
I wish I could have got to the front lines and been more like help. There needed to be help in the entire region, but that was my goals, and I did complete some of my objectives.
Well, a lot of us think about doing things, and we think, oh, it would be great, if I did this or that, but we don't actually go out and do it. So that's awesome that you're chasing your passion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of this because I have my main objectives are, again, to help the environment, to help with humanitarian issues, or just try to help make the world a better place. So when I spend my personal time, my money, and my resources, I try to direct them towards those things. Journalism is a way that I could reach a lot of people with the information I have. And I have utilized journalism and mass media not only to raise awareness of environmental issues and humanitarian issues. Over the last decade or so, I've been using it to try to raise awareness of climate change, because I've been studying climate change a lot longer than the average person. And I've seen our society, as they say, sleepwalking to the edge of a cliff or whatever. And right now, we are passing the global warming tipping point, and 9 out of 15 of Earth's systems are collapsing beyond repair. So I continue to try to reach people, whether it's through productions like this, whether it's through Facebook, social media, YouTube. There's a lot of different ways through public speaking and conversations. You have
a get-together at 3 o'clock on Sundays at Blue Lagoon.
Correct. So that's one of the ways.
Yeah, and tell people about that. Everyone is invited. It's a really fun event.
So at the Blue Lagoon every Sunday, we meet up from 3 to 5 o'clock. It is a community event. We designed this event so we can discuss climate change, environmental issues, and sustainable solutions. We did this as like an open mic format, so anyone that comes in can talk on the microphone and express their feelings or their concerns, hopefully gain support from other community members, their family, or whoever participates in the event. It is a potluck, so you can bring food, and we're encouraging people to go there and kind of team up and start working on projects together, be supportive of one another. And we hope more people show up that are not just like-minded people. We hope, just random people come in and they might have heard about climate change. They might know that we need to, be focusing on this, and they can come and learn more about it or ask questions. So that is at the Blue Lagoon. It's a free event. It's from 3 to 5 every single Sunday, and we've been doing it for about 2 months. It's been successful, and we hope more people continue to come every week.
It's a very fun event.
Cool.
Yeah, what was it that got you started being interested in climate change? Did you say in 2003 or 2002?
Around 2002, 2003.
Yeah. What was it that caught your attention about it?
So I started learning when I worked for a community TV station. I filmed a lot of government meetings, and worked with the police a lot, and the firefighters, and a lot of local car accidents. You learn more about how our society functions. And it wasn't until I started covering a lot of forest fires. I think the first major forest fire that I covered, I don't remember the year, but one of the first major ones was the Angora fire that affected South Shore Lake Tahoe, and 250 houses burned in that neighborhood. And I started seeing the pollution enter the atmosphere. I started seeing the pollution on the ground, knowing that it's eventually going to enter our groundwater. And I just started making the connections in between environmental impact of forest fires and the environment. And I pretty sure I just started kind of doing some keyword searches on the internet, started hearing more about it. I have a really good Time magazine that talks about climate change and disasters. I think it says 2007. So more and more things kept reassuring me that climate change is caused by mankind, and I wasn't getting distracted by Facebook algorithms that it's fake, or I wasn't watching the wrong YouTube videos. I wasn't getting misled by my family and friends or people that doubt climate change. I was looking at NASA websites, other UN websites, and I was just getting information from good sources. And it was really hard on me seeing that climate change was real and what was going on. And so many people throughout our society were doubting it. And it was...
That was kind of the beginning of the misinformation
Yeah.
campaign. There was an era when Newt Gingrich sat on the couch with Nancy Pelosi, and they both said, there was an ad, there was a PSA, and they both said, you know, we've got to do something about climate change.
Really?
That
Okay.
was a different era.
Yeah.
That was, so you kind of came in when there was just the beginning of the disinformation campaign. That's hard to watch. It's hard to watch people
and
be
even
misinformed.
Today.
Yeah, and then getting worse and worse. What's your feeling about why we're so slow to take action?
Honestly, so last year I was contacted by my friend that works for the UN, and I spoke at a UN climate change conference simulation at the UN headquarters in Vienna, Austria. So after I spoke at that conference,
Wow.
I traveled through 11 European countries over 5 months. I didn't meet anybody that said climate change isn't real. I saw everybody, you know, recycling in 9 different directions, and more parks and less guns, and just more community and more environmental sustainability, less owning extra cars and extra houses and extra things. There's not even organic food there because they trust their food in general because there's GMOs is banned in a lot of places. Just a better culture. And I think getting back to your question, okay, so education. So the more environmentally educated we are, the more conscious we become. Everyone throughout Scandinavia, because I was mainly in Norway for a month, Sweden for a month, Finland for a month, they're so educated just with their education system. They're more knowledgeable and more conscious. In America, there's not only the Facebook algorithm and YouTube, like I mentioned, and a lot of propaganda and fake news and all this other stuff. We have so many distractions in between TV shows and movies and video games, pornography, there's sports, and people with their distractions and their hobbies and their churches and their family and their friends and their career I can name so many other distractions. People are distracted in America from buying the next thing or their iPhone or even social media in general, that we're out of balance. We're not focusing on what's important. And it's kind of like insurance. We should be spending a portion of our day every time researching sustainability and solutions and things that are going to benefit the environment and the earth we live on, as well as a portion of our the money that we make should be donated to nonprofits that are planting trees or helping make the world a better place. And in America, we're really out of balance. We just have that selfish mindset, and we live and own things that we own and buy things that don't serve purposes, and we just
we're caught in the
consumerism.
loop.
It's so out of control, and it's frustrating because it's putting billions of people's lives at risk around the world. Because America, the individual carbon footprint of every American is so much higher than most every other country. And people say, oh, well, China is this or India. Yeah, but every one of us, we're causing a lot more damage. So every single one of us that makes the choice to consume less resources, lower our carbon footprint, whether it's be vegan or recycle or the thousands of other things that we could be doing, and
all kinds
make a big difference.
Yeah, I don't know if you've looked into the drought in Guatemala is a lot driven by climate change and is a lot of the reason why we're getting so many refugees. So we see that our activity impacts other countries. Yeah. And even though, you know, we can be resilient as we go forward, we can adapt. But poor nations around the world are impacted by it in ways and they can't adapt. And so adaptation is a great idea for the United States, but it's not a solution because as refugee crises get worse around the planet, around those droughts and instability and heat waves and all those things, it's a major global disaster.
It's going to cause a lot more problems.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I agree with you that a lack of focus from consumers is a big driver. There's a whole political party, though, that really wants to stick with fossil fuels. They're really, you know, drill, baby, drill, frack, baby, frack, right? That's the gas and oil party, some people would say. So that's kind of a dynamic. Do you see the political side of it somewhat, too, impacting how slow we're going? It's kind of...
Yeah. So if we're going to talk about politics, personally, I'm a Bernie Sanders supporter. I've now seen Bernie Sanders 7 times I've waited outside of his events 3 times. I've shaken his hand 3 times. I had a wonderful conversation with his wife for maybe 3-5 minutes. At one of the events, I had a wonderful conversation with Nina Turner, both Bernie Sanders' wife and Nina Turner, about climate change and the climate emergency. And I have endorsed Bernie Sanders since I waited for him outside of this Santa Cruz Sports Arena in 2015. Not only is he focusing on climate change and divesting from the fossil fuel industry and creating jobs for people that have worked for the fossil fuel industry or the coal industry, he's helping them transition. Well, to explain this, I saw him speak when he released the Green New Deal in Reading, and he went over everything in detail. If anyone wants to know about this, they just Google search Bernie Sanders Green New Deal, and it will systematically explain some of his steps. One of the huge things he's doing, which I would assume you're aware, is he's trying to ban fracking throughout California or the United States. But whether it's impossible or not, it is on his Green New Deal as a step he's leaning towards. Bernie Sanders was speaking, he's on video speaking in front of a middle school in 1987 about climate change and the impacts and the superstorms of the future that we're seeing today. So he's been ahead of the curve much longer than you or most of, So he's a leader. And
in 2015, he came out to Salinas and did a talk here about fracking specifically.
Wow. Okay, specifically.
I got to be there for that too, and he is he's inspirational, but he's so approachable. He just seems like, he does kind of seem like your uncle or something, and you can tell that, he really does have that level of passion. He's not just saying that because he wants to get power or something. He's so genuine and sincere.
He cares about all of us.
Yeah, I agree.
We're all in this together, and he realizes that. And he's showing more people that we are all in this together, and it is all about us. Yeah,
banning fracking would be a good start, and I will be interested to see what would happen in the gas and oil industry, like what would be the blowback if we were able to do that, because they are, really relying on the idea that we're going to frack. I've heard 1 million new gas and oil wells across the United States to feed this new export industry. This is liquefied natural gas, and that is related to climate change. So gosh, if he could get in, in the long run, we just need to switch. And the tech, we can figure out the tech. We're so close, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper all the time. So it's kind of almost like a no-brainer that we should switch to green energy. And I think the Green New Deal is a fabulous path to that.
So he's part of that, the Green New Deal. There's also us voting with our money and getting involved in politics other than just Bernie Sanders.
Right.
So here in the city of Santa Cruz, Justin Cummings, which is now the mayor, and other council members, they're working towards, I don't know how to say it, but like banning gas stoves in Santa Cruz County or the city. And then that's to help transition us away from natural gas, is correct? Because the less we're dependent on it, the faster our transition. So that's one thing that we're doing locally, and hopefully it sets a good example that other communities will also start doing.
Yeah, locally we have quite a few climate change related groups. SCCAN's, Santa Cruz Climate Action Network.
Extinction Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion is fabulous. We're lucky to have Sunrise Movement. We have Citizens Climate Lobby.
Ecology Action, which does environmental stuff. I don't know if they specifically focus on climate change, but they're doing a lot of great work too.
A really good focus. Save Our Shores, of course. And they talk a lot and meet with local electeds. And so good to see
hopefully
that kind of progress.
Anyone watching could to support that list that we just listed, because they need more help.
All of those
they need
groups,
more support. They need more donations.
If you're interested in doing something to make sure that we stop this climate emergency, we have Santa Cruz Climate Action Network, and that's SCCAN. They're online. Extinction Rebellion Santa Cruz. You can find us all on Facebook. Get out there. And actually, I bet you would attest to this. When you get out there and start meeting people and doing actions and partaking and, not just sitting home and thinking that you should, but actually putting your boots on and going out, it's such a blessing. It's so fun. And the people that are involved are so wonderful. And it's so neat to spend your time doing something great with people in your community. what could be better?
Yeah.
I mean, watching football is fun,
Yeah.
but it does not compare. I mean, the playoffs today were a blast, but it's not the same. It's way more fun to do something great in your community. And ending natural gas stoves, Berkeley did that.
Okay.
And that is something that we're really working on. I'm not sure a lot of people know natural gas is 95% methane. So methane is the worst, one of the worst climate agents. It's 100 times more warming than carbon over the first 100 years. And right now, methane is the answer that we're using globally to fix climate change, which makes no sense. So we have a problem of too much greenhouse gases in the air, in the atmosphere, too much greenhouse gas emissions. So we're going to answer that with methane. Lots and lots more methane. So we definitely have to change course. You have done an amazing job finding ways to be active.
Thank you. I have a list that I can show other people to
share other ways that people can interact. And while you're doing that, really quick, I want you to flash your new tattoo.
Okay, yeah. So on this list somewhere is it does say tattoo. So there's different ways to raise awareness of
Here we go.
Climate change and environmental issues, because we need to have more of these conversations. It needs to be a topic of conversation. So about 6 days ago, I got this tattoo. So whether I'm on my phone or looking at my phone,
right
buying something in a grocery store.
There you go. See, we all need one of those. That's a tattoo, man. He's going to live with that the rest of your life. And I think that is so fabulous.
Because if we can't stop the climate emergency, nothing else is going to matter. So hopefully this helps. If someone has doubt, maybe they think climate change might be real, but they're not sure because they're just not sure. So maybe they'll see this and it'll convince them, or they'll have a conversation with me and I can provide them with the information to the best of my ability that climate change is real. I know it's real, and there's no doubt in my mind that it's caused by mankind, and we have to work on solutions collectively. And it's a serious emergency.
We have to get on it now. It's a crisis.
It's a crisis. So I put together this list, and it's not just about shows like this.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back.